I think a lot of stories have been told already. Kathy had helped me a lot in creating a Flashpoint drive, which didn't work tonight in my computer. So the pictures are a little bit different than what I thought they were going to be, so we're going to wing it. Okay, I had thought we were going to have pictures of my grandpa and grandma at first. They're in here, but they're coming later. This is the second Christian Reformed church in Lebanon. Actually, this church burned down in the 1920s. And okay, here we go. And also, I want to say, I appreciate everybody coming. And this program is not just about Lebanon Church and Lebanon School. It's about all the people that lived around Lebanon and did their business there and visited there. And it's also about the country school that was a little bit east of Lebanon. My sister Lida went there, and she said she didn't learn a thing. I don't know what happened. But she said she was the only one in her grade. I was
in the first and second grade.
And her teacher was so busy with all those other naughty kids, she just made Lida do busy work, writing her letters and so on and so forth.
But I never even learned the alphabet.
Well, she made up for it later, so it's all good. But anyway, so we're going to see what's next. This is exciting because I don't know. Here's the Lebanon School, 3 rooms. Whoops, now we got something here. All right.
Put your cursor.
Yep. Okay, I gotta look this way. All right, this is our house. My mom and dad lived through the tornado of 1944. In fact, if you think about it, it's 80 years ago. Yeah. And it was June 16, the day of the big floods out in Rock Valley. Our house was very much damaged, and my dad was baling hay that day. And he kept saying to my brother Lane, we need to get the cows milked and get the chores done. We're going to get a storm. It was building all afternoon. This is a story from my brother Lane, who was a wonderful historian. And they got the milking done, and they got in the house, and it started to storm. And they went in their cellar. My sister Lida was a baby of a year old.
I wasn't a year old. I was a half a year old.
She was 6 months. Okay. And George was maybe 4, and Greta and Lane were 12 and 13 probably. I have a picture of them over there about the ages they were. My dad laid on top of George and Lane, and Lida, or rather Lane and Greta, and my mom laid on top of Lida and George, and they prayed, Lord, spare us. And when the storm stopped, they came out and everything was pretty much gone. I have more pictures of the tornado. And my dad, in his way, said that we have our lives, and he was grateful. This is our house when it was fixed, and it was moved to Rock Valley. I have no idea where it is. We used to look for it, but I bet it's gone now. If you look on the bottom left corner, it's Dad's name is there, George Coy. All right, we'll see. And here's a picture of the Lebanon Church. And here's the steeple. And this also is the church, I believe. Yeah. These were the unhelpful people that came around after the tornado. And I remember Mom saying that was such a nuisance. The farmers were trying to get their horses collected and their livestock gathered up, and you had all these people walking around. And they were nothing but gawkers. Sorry, I mean. You know what I mean? So, and also the National Guard was out there. And we always went to bed with shoes next to our bed in the summertime in case we'd have to run down the basement. This is a picture of a school days. I have I'm not sure what year it was. This is my dad right here. You can see that's him. He looks like he's kind of naughty. This is my Uncle Alice Coy. And I'm not, we have actually, if you want to know the names of all these students, I do have them on the back of the picture. This is, Lebanon had a hardware and auto supply store that my grandpa Remco Coy started, and he also was one of the first people in this area to sell cars. And this is, I don't know, does anybody know what kind of car this is? Pretty fancy. And this is also one of the buildings that Grandpa had built in Lebanon. And the welding was very important in that day too. We'll see. And this, Coy's Garage Auto Repairing, we weld anything. And my sister Lida said to me, well, Linda, that was our garage on the farm. Really? I didn't know that, but now that I see it. I think, Brad, was that there when you lived there?
No. Not that I remember.
This is a picture of Lebanon. I think it was taken
2021.
2021. Thanks, Kathy. That's a pretty picture. This is a picture my dad wrote on. That's his handwriting. This was the blacksmith shop in Lebanon. And there was a house in the back. You can see that here.
So you think that's Joe Franken's blacksmith shop?
I think it came down during the tornado. I found Joe Franken's obituary. And that has a little. This is Aunt Bertha's line a day. This is about the church. Right here it says, cold. All went to church. Gertie went home. I don't know, did she just get married? Anyway, she went home. It said, church and school burned down at 6 p.m. and they saved the school furniture. So that was a beautiful church. This is the present day Lebanon church. And this also is of the tornado. I think this was the store. Does anybody know? Evie, do you know? Yeah. And this house, there was a story about our cousin, Toots Coy. Is anybody related to her? Well, you are.
That's my mom.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the story how she lived in Lebanon during that tornado?
Oh,
I don't know. I think she was with somebody though, but
yeah, she wasn't.
That was Tilly Croy.
Tilly
Oh,
Coy.
Tilly, that's what
Oh,
it was.
okay.
It's my aunt.
In that house.
Yeah.
And
That's what it's called.
she was pregnant and she had a small 2-year-old. And they were running for the parsonage and actually got blown away and they didn't get into the basement.
That sounds like the story I heard too. So that tornado was.
A little bit.
Don't go all the way off.
That's okay.
All right. Here's a picture of the first church.
It's hard.
And that was one big congregation. This is a picture of the congregation. I do believe that this is looking west. I think the church was on top of the hill. And the reason it is named Lebanon, does anybody know? Dad always said it was because it was up on a hill
And windy.
and windy. But what's that got to do with Lebanon?
I don't know.
I looked it up, and I looked in my concordance in the back of the Bible. Yeah, there's references to Lebanon in the Bible, but it doesn't say anything about it being on the hill that I know of. But anyway, and this was before the church had a 33-foot addition on it. But this was a very much a growing community, and a lot of them, I would guess, the majority of them were Dutch immigrants. This is after the church had an addition. You can see that was a good size addition. And this was the parsonage. And that was gone long before I was born. And here's a picture of Lebanon, 1990, right, Kathy?
Right, 1991.
So here's the store. And at that time, probably that was the feed store. This was the 3-room school. The parsonage is back here. Here's the church. And Joe Franken.
The parsonage is the next one,
right here.
right there.
Yeah. And this was Joe Franken's house. And then the Schullemans. And there was a little house there that Mr. Sipka Dorhout lived in when I was a little girl. And then the Bowders lived in the next house. And that was it, I think. And here's the Bowder farm. Is Mr. Dwayne Bowder here?
I am here.
And you just celebrated a pretty important anniversary, right?
Yes, we did. A week ago Saturday, we just celebrated the 125th year of our farm.
I think that deserves some applause. Congratulations, that's quite something.
Thank you.
And this is a picture of the names of the people that were on that school picture. Okay, this is a picture of early Lebanon. And this must have been the store at that time. And I don't know for sure. I was going to say before I even started talking, if anybody has an addition or a correction, I won't be offended. Because this says downtown Lebanon, 1910. There's the school again. And the church, a little bitty picture. Now, are we repeating?
No.
Okay.
That,
That's in front of my grandpa and grandma's house that was later purchased by the Havras family. But that house is still standing. I hope I have a picture. I don't know who these little girls are, but they're really cute.
They were children of the pastor who married.
Oh, okay. So here's some more of the tornado. And this was the first one I showed. So I'm wondering, I don't have
You're
the...
missing some.
I'm missing some, yep. Do you suppose we can find them?
Don't delete. Don't delete.
Okay. I think what happened was my computer was a different one than what Chuck had here. So we kind of... I do have pictures, however, on
You
that.
can put the light back on.
that's only a two-room.
Yeah, that's a two-room school.
We haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, Chuck, they might be. Click the next one, Linda. You might be on.
To go backwards? Or
No, go frontwards.
That was.
We saw that.
Oh, we must have just went past that last one.
Yeah. I do in here somewhere, there's pictures of present day Lebanon. And just this past Thursday, I was over in Lebanon taking pictures. And I don't know. Second Lebanon.
Isn't technology wonderful? When it works. You can understand.
Maybe you need the light on now again.
I don't know where that went. It has disappeared. But anyway, they had a wedding reception at the Havras estate. That house that my grandpa Coy built in early 1900s is still there. If you ever are interested and like looking at old architecture, it's a beautiful old home. And what's really neat is Barry told me they painted the barn because his grandson was having his wedding reception out there this past Friday night. So that barn was built in 1898, and it's still standing. One thing my grandpa had, and I did have a picture of it, is a sign on the barn that said, "No smoking."
Yes. Yes.
And my grandpa, I don't think it was so much that of the health hazards as much as he didn't want his barn to burn down. So also, the house was remodeled in 1913. And my niece Barbara told me a story that my dad told her. He said when that was remodeled, he was just a little boy because he was born in 1904. And he and his brothers slept in the new addition, but there was no attic above them. And they were hot in the summer and they were cold in the winter. And he said that the girls, his sisters, they had the benefit of sleeping in the big house. So,
Linda,
Yes.
Do you think you could find the icon that says PowerPoint? What you are in is some files on that flash drive that were pictures I gave you of Remco and his family, of
I don't know. We're letting this guy see what he.
Kathy, if you want to go up and try to figure it out, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the name is.
There should be
Probably
something
want to
that
put the
just
light
says,
back on now.
that just says PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Would you like to flick a light switch right by your head there, sir?
There's no PowerPoint in here.
No. Anyway, I think we're not going to find him, but I do have pictures over there. And one thing that I do have that is really interesting is the land deed from the United States to my grandpa. And the reason, the reason I wrote this down, I think the Homestead Act of 1862 was signed by Abraham Lincoln. It granted Americans 160-acre plots of public land. Well, speculators took advantage of this to resell the land. This was probably how my grandpa Remco Coy ended up with prairie on the banks of the Dry Creek from a landowner in Utah 25 years after 1862. That, I have a very delicate document laying there that my dad always had, and it's of the land transfers of my grandma and grandpa as my grandpa Remco Coy bought land over the years. At one time he owned about 2,000 acres of land, and it is known, as Mrs. Russ said, he sponsored as many as 75 people in 1 month to come from the Netherlands. So people would work for him, and then they would go off and farm on their own. And all of them spoke Dutch. And my grandpa also, my dad spoke Dutch, but he was born in the United States, and so was my grandpa Remco. But it was a very Dutch community at that time. Yeah, let's see what that one is. Anyway, any questions?
Why don't you talk about that church, those two churches out at Highland that were...
You know, Kathy is, the church that she's referring to is south of Lebanon. There's it's a memorial of some churches that were there. And Kathy is of the opinion that they probably were ready to build a church because they had attended that church and it was a little further away from Lebanon. And I don't know if, I mean, I had never heard that before, but that's very possible. Laura Brown, your grandma, I know that family went to that church. And there were two churches out there, Kathy?
Yeah.
There were. One was
Kathy, why don't you come up and grab the microphone a minute?
Yeah, she should. I think she's gone. But, yeah.
It's probably in there, it's just a matter of...
Yeah.
there were two churches side by side. One was a Lutheran church, and so the Highland Cemetery that is still there was connected to that Lutheran church. The Coy family went to, it's a long name, Mount Joy,
Oh, yeah.
Mount Joy, something, something, something.
Yeah.
And that was a Methodist church. And these people with Dutch Reformed background wanted to worship with people whose doctrine was like theirs. And so that's where Remco Coy came in, donated the land. Interesting to family members is that Remco Coy himself never actually joined that church. His wife, Greta, Linda's grandma, my great-grandma, her children were baptized in 1903, I think, even before the church itself was built.
She was the first mother to baptize, and she baptized how many children by herself?
I think 5.
And that's in the, some of our resources were the Lebanon Christian Reformed Church Anniversary 3-ring binder book over there, and it lists all the baptisms, and it's really interesting. But she baptized all 10 of her children by herself. And that was really, interesting to me. She must have been one strong Christian woman, and yeah, so
Yeah, they came from different kinds of backgrounds.
yeah.
Remco was orphaned at age 10 in Chicago. He stayed close to his siblings, who ended up being spread around the United States. But Greta came from, as a baby, overseas. Her family was in Alta, Wisconsin for a while, and then there are stories about how they got to Iowa, to Sioux County.
Yeah.
But yeah, Remco actually broke Prairie, which is things that we read about in Laura Ingalls Wilder.
I also had a picture of Lebanon looking from that bridge that is west of Sioux Center, or west of Lebanon. When I was a kid, that bridge was not straight. It was not a straight intersection. It was slanted, and in the top of that bridge were my uncle's, when the concrete was wet, they had put their names in there. Do you remember that, Lida? So, and then they broke it up and put a straight bridge. It's not interesting at all. So, I guess that's all I have.
Could you click on that picture that says Lebanon Girls 18 or 1990?
I'm going to try this one right there. Oh, they're on there? Okay, so is your grandma in here, Kathy?
She is, with glasses, second row.
Right here.
Second from the left, no, come down a row.
Here she is.
Yes,
That's Aunt Bertha. Is this Aunt Drika?
it is.
Our Aunt Drika passed away at the age of 26. She had a broken appendix. She was married to Case Haveros, and she had 2 little children at the time. Yeah, it was very sad.
There's another picture on there of the young men at that time.
Yeah, maybe we'll be lucky.
You can identify. And that picture was in the Banner, which is the denominational magazine of the Christian Reformed Church, if you're not familiar with that.
There's my Grandma Coy, and I'd never seen that picture before.
Well, the picture of the young men was taken that year. It was in the Banner because Lebanon, you mentioned how many people were in that church. Lebanon had the largest group of young men in a society in the whole Christian Reformed denomination.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was because of...
They're all here tonight.
I thought maybe Pastor Drenton would be here. He would say, "This is a great group." This is my grandpa, Rick Coy, and this is Grandma.
And then my grandma in the middle.
Oh, there's Aunt Bertha. Yeah.
And those are the pastor and his wife.
Oh, I see. Huh. Anyway,
So
that
with all
com-
of those young men there, did you have a flock of young women move in?
well, if you were a Coy, you probably married either a Haveros, they had brother-sister combinations, or a Deckers, or it was Vandemas, Vanderlook, yep. And I was looking at this too. Some of the early charter members of the Lebanon Christian Reformed Church are Manus Vuktavane, L.G. Vanderplatz, Mrs. Tilly Vanderstaff, Mr. and Mrs. T. Van Doyen, and I think he named the church. So it's too bad he didn't write it down why he did that, but he did. And Jacob Bass, B-A-A-S, Mr. and Mrs. Peter Boer, Mr. Samuel Kazma, Jacob Smith-Claveringa, and Mr. Martin Vanderlook. I also remember my dad talking about the Princes. There was a family with the last name of Prince. Does anybody remember that family?
They moved to Hartley area.
Okay.
Some of them ended up in Stanford. This was a Siebesma wedding, Caroline Siebesma, and,
That's Aunt Bertha right here.
sure, yeah. And some of that family ended up in the Platte, South Dakota area.
Okay.
This is Aunt Bertha Vanderlook.
Uncle Coy had a fair amount of money for a while,
Yeah.
and this is a picture of my grandma, baby picture. He and his wife were unhappy because Grandma looked cross-eyed, probably because she was. So, and they had her picture be taken, you might show up in there where the attendant just had the photographer straighten out her eyes. Same dress, cute little picture, but, yeah, changed that.
That's a cute picture too. Oh, there's Bertha.
About age 13 there.
Aunt Bertha lived to be 106. She was in our nursing home. I worked there when she came in. She was 99 years old, and she took all of the medicine she took was 1 aspirin a day. And the doctor said, I'm not messing with anything with her. She is doing fine. And it was such a privilege to have several of my uncles and aunts and my parents in the nursing home.
She was sharp to all the way to the.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I think that's all. You sure can look at the pictures. We do have Iowa Images is a book written by my cousin, Irene Coy Chadwick. It was written some years ago. It's really interesting. If you are interested in what life was like back in the day, that's an interesting book.
Is that your book?
That one is my book. And they also have it in the library.
Okay.
You can check it out. So, thank you all for coming. Oh, we got somebody who wants to say
Got a
something.
question here.
A question, or you want to talk? Oh, here we have a Hoyer, a Mr. Hoyer.
I wanted to chair it, but I'd like to say something. My mom wanted to come in the worst way.
Oh.
She didn't feel good.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Well, I remember the days, and I don't know if we heard the name Ted Hansen.
Oh, yes, that wasn't on there, Mr. I should have said that. I printed out his obituary. He came to Lebanon in 1938 and built the store, or used whatever building was there. And, yeah, go
So
ahead.
that's where we had to spend our nickel after the captain. Quite a decision,
What
which
did?
kind of candy to buy. But the Highland Church, one of those churches, was moved to our great-great-grandpa Bonhama's farm about a half a mile north of where it was located where Elmer Bonhama used to live.
Oh, yeah,
And
separate
I
time.
guess Elmer's brother Harold was saved one time by the tornado in that he and a couple other boys were throwing stones and broke a window in the steeple of the church. So they were faced with the possibility of catching the Dickens the next day. So when he woke up, the church was gone.
Wow.